It's the Les Paul Show.
Okay, when I was again at the house and working in the control room with Dad came to me one day and he says, listen, I need such and such a guitar. And I said, okay, I know where it is. And I went downstairs to get it, brought it up, and put it on the couch. And he said, go ahead and open it. So I opened it. And it was this gold guitar. It was absolutely beautiful. I had been used to the Les Paul black Gibson, the white Gibson, and I'd never seen this guitar. And it was just absolutely stunning. And I knew at that time, Dad had a story with every guitar he had. So I asked him, I said, Dad, what's the story with this one? The second time was the charm. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? He says, this guitar came about because when I was a kid, about 12 years old, I used to play for tips at a barbecue stand. And a fella after the set dropped a message to me and he said, I could hear your voice well, I can hear your harmonica well, but I couldn't hear your guitar. And Dad said, this is where this guitar started. He says, now, in retrospect, he says, the only regret I've got is I never knew this man's name, because he's the reason I went on this journey. So I listened to Dad, and Dad said that he went back to his mother's house, and he went through trying to figure out how to amplify this in some way so his performances were better. And he looked around the home, and he found that his mother had a couple of things that she didn't need. And he took it upon himself to use them. One was his telephone his mother had, and the other was the radio. And he took the two and amplified the guitar a little bit, and it was better. But he wasn't getting out of it what he wanted. So eventually he experimented a little bit more with it and thought maybe something different, something more solid would be better to try. And he was close to the railroad tracks. So he went with his little red wagon and his buddy to go see what he could find over there. It was solid. Well, he found something. It was a piece of the metal railroad track. So it was just big enough that they could put it in the red wagon and bring it back. And he experimented with it. He put the strings on it, put his mother's microphone from the telephone on it, and he realized that the sound was different from what he got from the acoustic guitar. And this started him thinking, except for the fact that this is not going to work because it weighed a ton and there's no way anybody's going to move it around. So he went to his acoustic guitar and he stuffed it with shirts, shorts, socks, whatever he could find to muffle it and try and make it more solid. And it changed it a little bit, but not enough. And he even went to the extreme of putting plaster of Paris in it. And that was a little better, but not what he was thinking about. And a few years later, when he was performing, he was performing in New York City. He wanted to find some place where he could have proper tools and make something that was more correct. And he located Epiphone. They had a place in town, Epiphone Guitar, and they had a shop. And he went over and talked to them and kind of got on their good side, became good friends with them. And that's where he started to experiment with what he called the log. And that was a 4x4 piece of wood with a neck on it, and put the strings on it put the pickup on it, and experimented with that. That was quite good. And he thought, okay, let me experiment with this in a club. So he took it to a club and he used it. And when he came home, my mother was there and she asked, well, how'd it go? And he said, no real good response like it normally is. And so he thought about that. And he said, well, maybe it's got something to do with the fact that it looks like a 2x4, not a guitar. So he went back to Epiphone shop and put the wings on it. And it looked more like a regular guitar. And he went back to the club, same song, and played it. And when he came home that night, my mom asked him again, what happened? And he said, it was perfect. They reacted like they normally do. They loved it. He says, I think I learned something new. And she said, what's that? And he said, I believe people hear with their eyes. Okay. So he went on from there, and years passed by. And then in 1941, he figured he was ready for Gibson. And he had his eyes on Gibson. And Gibson, at that time, not only made guitars, but made mandolins, made acoustical upright basses, violins, cellos. So he looked at this company as being really first class. And he admired the wood part of it. He really liked that. So he went to Gibson and got a meeting with Gibson. Gibson sat down with him, listened to what he had to say. He brought the log with him, which was definitely proven, and they turned him down. They said, thanks, but no thanks. And that was that meeting. And Gibson even came up with a thing where they marked Dad as the guy with the broomstick with the pickups on it. So, and he didn't mind, because he knew one day it's going to be Gibson. But he carried on. So then he went on, it's still around 1941. He went back to Epiphone, which Epiphone had a stock guitar he thought he could use, with modifications, of course. And he put metal plates, he just couldn't stop. And he made, between 1941 and 1946, he made 3 of them. And during that time, he performed with Jazz at the Philharmonic with Nat King Cole and used the clunker. He recorded It's Been a Long, Long Time with Bing Crosby. That's with the clunker. He went on to do Les Paul's New Sound instrumentals with the clunker. And of course, the golden one was Les and Mary with all the gigantic hits they had. And that was really where that clunker sat, and it was working. So he knew he had another great step going on. And about 1950, Gibson came to him again and said to him, are you still interested? Well, it took Dad 2 seconds to answer that one. And they started to go ahead with Dad's guitar idea with Gibson. It took 2 years, and he went through the shape, the color, imperfections that he looked at where the bridge wasn't right, and this one was right, and the neck wasn't quite right, went back and forth and back and forth. And finally, around 1952, they shipped him a guitar to approve. It wasn't right. Some of them he couldn't play. Some of them just weren't right yet. And then this one showed up. And when this one showed up, that was it. Dad said, we've got it. This is the one we're going to go with. Start manufacturing. And Dad said to me, this is my number one.